applause for our musician, Laura Steigerwald, and my favorite instrument ever. Laura is now going to go back and work in the kitchen. When you're a musician, you usually go to the, a waitress when you're not playing. But no, Laura's great, and we appreciated her coming and playing for us today. I'm Barb Hardington. I'm the current president of Protect Geauga Parks, and welcome to Munson Town Hall for the 8th Annual Heroes of Conservation Program. I first want to introduce Jim McCaskey, Munson Township Trustee, who's going to welcome you.
On behalf of myself, Andy Bushman, Todd Ray, and Irene McMullen, welcome to Munson Township. On behalf of all of the Protect Geauga Parks members, please enjoy this afternoon's event as we appreciate the efforts of 4 great people. Thank you.
Before I start the program, I want to introduce a few more people who are here today. I want to start with introducing elected officials, and I will see if I get everybody. We have Chuck Walder, County Auditor. We have Aaron Walder, Fiscal Officer, Russell Township. We have Matt Rambo, Russell Township Trustee, with his family, Stephanie and his kids, Charlie and James. We already know that we have the Munson trustees here, Irene McMullen, Andy Bushman, and Jim McCaskey, and Todd Ray, Fiscal Officer, that is also an elected position. And that's our are there other elected officials that I missed or didn't vote for? Sorry about that. We're going to be if you have a program, the rest of the program will be basically following along the agenda there, with me interrupting every now and then. I want to start now by introducing Shelley Chernin, who is the person behind the story of the heroes.
Thank you for the stool. It is really helpful. So I want to welcome you all to our celebration of the Heroes of Conservation of Geauga County. For those of you who've been here, you've heard me give this talk before, but for those of you who haven't been to a Heroes of Conservation event before, it's become our tradition to begin the event by telling the story of how the Heroes of Conservation came to be. It starts out a little bit like Halloween, but it's not scary, I promise. On a dark, stormy day in June of 2015, so we've got a lot of years here now, I had the privilege of participating in a hike that the botanist Jim Bissell, many of you may know him, led at a place called Culliker Fen, which is actually right here in Munson. And so we were just a small group of very curious, excited nature lovers who were gathered on this very, very cold, rainy morning to see a very, very special hidden place in Geauga County. And we parked on the street. The fen is actually down a hill. Before we hiked down the hill and into the fen, we stood by the road in this very cold, drenching rain, and Jim taught us about fens. I knew nothing about fens before this. We learned that a fen is a very special kind of place. It's a special type of wetland, and it's fed by underground stream and groundwater. It's kind of like a bog, but less acidic than a bog. Fens are extremely rare in Ohio, and they're home to many unusual and endangered plants and insects. We heard about some of these, including a rare and beautiful purple orchid that Culliker Fen is very famous for. And then we headed with Jim, all of us in our waterproof boots and our rain gear, down into the fen. And it was still dark and rainy at that point as we began our walk down the hill. But just as we got to the fen, the rain stopped and the sun peeked out, and it was like magic. As soon as we got to the fen, the first thing Jim did is he told us how to identify and avoid the poison sumac, which I understand is a really horrible plant if you touch it. Then we carefully followed Jim through the fen, trying as best as we could not to sink to the ground too far, although at one point I did sink into the muck so that it came over the top of my boot, and it was really hard then to pull my foot out of the ground, but I managed. So Jim stopped as we walked through the fen many times to talk to us about all these lush and fascinating plants. There are ferns and sedges and all these beautiful plants and insects, none of which I'd ever seen before. And it was just amazing to be able to experience so many things that I had never experienced before, and so close to my home. After our time in the fen, we came back up the top of the hill, and Jim said his goodbyes, but some of us stayed a little longer, even though it had started to rain again, and began to talk about our experience. And one member of the group told us the story of how Dr. and Mrs. Culliker, who owned that property, discovered the fen. And I learned at that point about all the personal sacrifices that the Cullikers had made to protect the fen from encroaching development. They were building houses all around there. So I had just personally experienced the magic of the fen itself, thanks to Jim Bissell. And then I was listening to this inspiring and touching story of the people who not only had made my experience possible, but had persevered in the face of cultural and economic climate that was much more interested in making money from the land than in protecting, conserving, and preserving this uniquely special place for generations to come. And I thought to myself, the Cullikers are true heroes of conservation, and the idea for this event to honor the conservation heroes of Geauga County was born. So I'd like to now introduce this year's Heroes of Conservation poet, Bob Coughlin. Bob was born in Willoughby-on-the-Lake and grew up in Euclid. He went to St. Joseph High School and has a deep connection to Lake Erie and the woods and parks in Northeast Ohio. He and his family have lived in Geauga County since 1997. Bob was a professor of English at Lakeland College for 30 years and was co-founder and co-editor of Chagrin River Review. Bob does poetry readings around Greater Cleveland, and I have to add, he's also a really good fiddler. Bob Coughlin.
Stand on this or not? We were in third grade. My third grade teacher sent me down to the drugstore, Ups and Drug, on East 260th, and said, ask him for a cigar box. And so I did that, and then when I got back to school, she put it under my feet so my feet would touch the ground in the little chair. So, I'm not really a good fiddler. Thanks, Shelley, but I'm really learning, but I enjoy it. So I have 5 poems here at the beginning and then 3 toward the end of the program. The first poem is called Cat Nation Ghosts, and there's a little introduction here. The Erie Indians, known to the French Jesuits as La Nation du Chat, the Cat Nation, victims of genocide circa 1655 at the hands of the Iroquois Federation. Cat Nation Ghosts. Only the subtle see the signs. Panthers haunt these woods, leave titillating traces. Names somewhat corrupted: Geauga, Chagrin, Cuyahoga, Erie. Ambiguous forts looking like natural rock formations on hills overlooking rivers and creeks. strangely shaped rocks, chips of flint, encrusted bits of bone and antler. The remnants haunt the sugar woods, move about on moonless nights, stealthy like the lynx, like the wildcat. We don't forget. Our blood still soaks the rocks. Our bones still quicken the clay. These woods are full of ghosts. When I was, one of the stanzas here reminds me